All right, greetings and welcome everybody to the By Brandon Jones channel. We are back. It's kind of an impromptu conversation. As many of you know, we have our results from the election. Trump has won, and now people are responding. People are responding in all different types of ways. We have men who are rejoicing. We have women who are crashing out. There's a lot happening. So, I'm stirring pots, unfortunately, just sharing comments. I haven't really said much, but of course, when I share things, things happen. People get upset. People get interested. People want to have conversations. So, I met someone online who thought that she would like to have a conversation. I'm saying, let's do it. She seems pretty cool. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. I'm going to introduce Jay to everybody. For folks who are coming in late, Jay is new to YouTube, so just be patient with Jay. Do not come on here attacking her. That's not necessarily what we're here to do. We're here to have a conversation. I am not here to debate Jay in any way. So people will flood in as we go. I'm going to bring Jay on up. Jay, are you ready to roll for the most part? All right, I can see you in the back chat. What's up, Jay? How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Hopefully this does not scare you away from ever talking to me again based on
Never. No.
it can get a little crazy. YouTube can get a little crazy, but yeah, let's get into it. Let's tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, etc.
Definitely. My name is Jay Belcito. I'm from the Twin Cities. I got two kids, a 8-year-old, a 17-year-old. I'm a longtime organizer for almost 2 decades now, a community organizer. I'm a former educator in Minneapolis Public Schools. I'm a social worker. I'm a therapist. I'm in grad school. And I really enjoy doing youth work and being a liaison between different communities, having productive conversations. So I'm excited to be here today. Thanks for having me, Brandon. Oh, I can't hear you.
My bad. I said so. Let's start with this whole term of crashing out. Let's just let's get to a baseline of understanding of what that means and what we're talking about. So I want you to first share what your thoughts are on crashing out, and then I'll share my thoughts and why I think women are crashing out.
Okay, what do I think crashing out is? I mean,
Yeah, you
it
crashing out.
kind of feels like I've been seeing this term a lot more recently, but it's just like going off the deep end, like doing too much, going crazy, like um being emotional and not rooted in logic. What would you say?
Mm, I would agree with that. That's where I was gonna start.
Okay.
Crashing out is definitely being highly emotional. It's pretty much when you suspend logic from dynamics and you start to do things that you normally would not do. And I think that what we've seen is a lot of women crashing out since Trump beat Kamala in the presidential race. And I find it concerning. I'm going to be honest, transparent. I think a lot of the crashing out that we're seeing is a little bit too extreme for what's happening. And I have some reasons which we'll dive into, but I think that the level of response that we're getting from Trump's presidency is highlighting one that people aren't as politically engaged as they probably should be, and two that people are too concerned with national politics and probably not as concerned with local politics. And I can talk a little bit more what I mean by that because there's some results that happened in the last two elections that probably affect people's lives a lot more than the actual presidency does. But it's important. It's important. I want to minimize the presidency, but it is important for us to understand. So that's my long answer to the question of what crashing out is. What do you think?
I mean, it's the entire premise is a little biased right now because I think men are crashing out more than women, and the title is "Why Are Women Crashing Out?" So I think we're going to start on opposite ends of school of thought on this. But I've seen a lot more posts from men that are rooted in emotion, kind of men who almost seem to be kind of like wanting to rub it in women's faces a little bit, as if this was like a gendered election because a woman was running for president. I'm not really sure. I'm much further left than the Democratic Party. I was not out here posting about either of these parties, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been interesting to kind of like zoom out and view it on more of like a patterns level and see what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So of course, anytime we talk about women, we gotta talk about men. So let's start there. Let's see what have you seen with men crashing out? What have you seen?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of men say things like, let's see, like maybe y'all will be more responsible and you won't need these abortions and You know, like we need something. Women are too emotional to be a leader. Like I'm not trying to be led by a woman. And how are we going to go to war if a woman's leading us? And Trump is a better businessman. And just kind of like women are mostly just like, damn, this sucks. Like I'm scared. What's going to happen? Like, is the Department of Education going to get defunded? I'm concerned. So there's like this very different energy in these posts that I'm seeing.
Okay. And you think that those posts are different than where they were, let's say, a month ago?
I mean, of course, like with the outcome of the election, yeah, I think emotions are heightened. I think people are experiencing a lot of grief post-election. I'm seeing that.
Okay. And
is grief crashing out? I mean,
yes. I think that. Okay. Well, no. Let me back up and give some further clarification. I think that grief is a result, or no, I think that crashing out is a result of grief. When you don't have good coping skills, or you're not thinking logically in dynamics, and you're going through a grieving process, crashing out definitely can be a part of that. I think we've seen enough of that during the pandemic. From my standpoint, I think that's a great example of how we've all experienced a grieving process. Like we lost a lot during the pandemic. Some of us lost connection. Some of us lost opportunities. Some of us lost our routines. Some of us lost people. Like we lost a lot collectively. And I think a result of that is we've seen a ton of people crashing off of that. Absolutely.
I would agree with that.
All right. So we're gonna stay on men because we're gonna just get this out of the way because we're gonna get we're gonna get all women in this conversation. So men are saying this is better for business. I don't want to be led by a woman. Women are highly emotional and they're probably not fit to be leaders. What are there any other major talking points that you've heard from men about women specifically?
I mean, I'm sure there are, but those are the first that are coming to mind. What are you seeing? What are you seeing women say?
Oh, I'm seeing further evidence of something that I call the Nas effect, which is niggas ain't shit. And I'm seeing this being pushed, and I'm seeing black men being blamed for Trump winning. And we can pull the numbers up. I got a graphic. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I'm seeing women feeling unsafe. I'm seeing women expecting to go, black women specifically, expecting to go into slavery. I've seen that with two separate women. I've seen women expecting that they will not have any sexual liberation. And I've seen women just completely being terrified of men. Those have been the main things that I've seen.
Okay. I've seen all of those sentiments for the most part.
Yes.
I would agree with that.
So, and I think that I don't think that any of those reactions are valid. And I'm going to say what I mean by that. I'm being controversial.
Okay.
I think that there's evidence. One, Trump's already been the president one time. Two, there's a lot that needs to take place for a lot of those things to happen. So I don't think that the type of response that we're seeing from some people, not everybody's responding this way, but some people are. I think that there's no evidence to really justify to have that level of fear or concern. Now, should you be concerned? Absolutely. And you should utilize your political action and the freedom and liberation that you have to engage to ensure these things don't happen. But I think that people are taking things a little bit overboard.
Okay. Well, I would like to address one of your points if you're cool with that.
All of them. Go for it.
Cool. All right. So where to start? So firstly, I agree with you that I do not think black men should be the focal point of conversations around the outcome of this election at all. And as a white person, I would never have the audacity to post about that or make the focal point of any of my arguments because I like to stay in my lane. And as we can see from the data, 50% of white people supported Trump. That's every other white person. So if I'm trying to think about how I'm combating fascism and white Christian nationalism, I need to be focused on people who are overwhelmingly cooperating or supporting that ideology. And I think maybe why it seems that way is because there have been some conversations about why everyone has shifted to the right a little bit, particularly like other like racial minority groups more than black men. Like 50% of Hispanic men. I don't remember the exact data, but I think like upwards of 40% of indigenous men. And so as this whole conversation started, I asked you a question. I like to approach things very curiously. And when I see that data, the first thing I think is why. I want to know why this is happening. I'm not pointing fingers or attacking people, right? And so I know Black men in my interpersonal life that supported Trump. And when I had conversations with them one-on-one, it gave me a lot of insights. A lot of them are like low income or struggling or feeling disenfranchised. By the time we got to the end of the conversation, I was able to kind of be on the same page with people that they want to opt out of this two-party system and they don't need to vote for Trump or Harris. Like people feel like they're in this like false dichotomy. And I can usually get on the same page with people once we start talking about values. But the way everything has been politicized in this binary right now is making that really difficult, I think. Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm so used to having my mic open. That's all good. I might do it like 4 more times. I think the polarization is a problem. And again, it's highlighting where a lot of folks are politically. A lot of us are surface level engaged in politics. Mm-hmm. And that feeds into the polarization. And a lot of people are voting based on something called racial idolatry. We don't need to get too deep into what that means if you don't know. Do you know what racial idolatry is?
Racial ideology, you said?
Idolatry.
No, teach me.
All right. So racial idolatry is pretty much when people have a blind faith based on race. It's almost like they idolize race. That's
they've like really bought into the constructs.
Like 100% bought in. Like the people who are only voting for Kamala because she may be a Black person. Now there's a lot of suspicion that she may or may not be Black, but let's say she is for the sake of conversation. So those folks who are like, Kamala's Black, I'm voting for her without caring about any policy.
Identity politics.
Yeah, well, it's identity politics, but it's in every facet of those people's lives. It always comes through the lens of race, and it doesn't come through any other lens. There's a lot of people like that, and it's not just Black people. I'm just using that as an example because I am Black, but there are a lot of people who think like that from that idolatrous place, and what it does is it interferes with their ability to think beyond what else could it be. So, I think that that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this crash out with a lot of women, is that they're not thinking, well, why are men, since we're being blamed, why are men trying to find another political candidate that might fit their needs and what they're trying to do? Like you mentioned a lot of disenfranchised Black men and why they started to lean toward Trump. Well, what were they saying? It wasn't because they hate women. Now, they might not want to deal with no woman. But a lot of men, especially the disenfranchised ones, and I've seen clips all over YouTube, we can pull some up, where they're talking about, well, shit, I'm broke. I'm trying to get my life together. And at least Trump was able to give me a stimulus check a couple of years ago. Now, what they did with the stimulus check is a whole nother conversation. But at least they recognize that this political candidate was trying to assist me in getting something in a world where I don't get a lot of things. Now, was it given to everybody? Was it specifically for them? Not necessarily. It was given to everybody. But from their perspective, they felt like that spoke to them and their needs. And I think that any political candidate worth their salt should be doing that. And I think Trump does that for a lot of different people.
Yeah, I hear you. I think I agree with a lot of that. Where I'll disagree is that Trump did that. Trump actually delayed when people received those stimulus checks just so he could put his name on it, to use that as political propaganda to make people believe that he was behind the stimulus checks. There's Congress, there's the Senate, there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to why we got that stimulus check and how much we got. So it was really interesting to me that I guess because he was the president, that he was bestowed with credit for anything positive that happened during his tenure. So that was a little bit frustrating to me. And people admit when I talk to them, they're like, yeah, I guess you're right. I guess I don't know who directly was responsible. All I know is while he was president, I got this money. Before that, it feels like no one gives a fuck about me. Right. And also, 80%, upwards of 80% of Black men supported Harris. So even most disenfranchised Black men still supported Harris. Exactly. But I don't know a ton of Black men who supported Trump at all, but I do know a few, and these are some of the things that they would say.
Yeah, exactly. But you walked into one of my points. Most Black men did support Trump, and we're still getting shitted on. It doesn't matter. And that's really my biggest concern, is that
you think there should be any conversation about why a margin increased of support for him increased?
That is
at all, or no?
Yeah, I think that is why. I think we already talked about it.
But is there room for that conversation without it being under the lens of like critique of Black men and more of like a conversation?
I only think amongst Black men and conservative Black women. I don't think that conversation can happen in a room like the rooms that me and you find ourselves in on a day-to-day basis, where most Black women are liberal. First of all, most Black men won't even say anything. because we will get shot down in those spaces and we will not be heard. We will be told that we hate women. We'll be told that we hate black people. We'll be called coons and bootlickers and all types of stuff. So
do you consider yourself to be politically conservative or socially?
Yes, and culturally. I'll say culturally conservative more than anything.
Okay.
I'm more practical politically. So I vote towards issues and what's going to make the biggest impact for.
You're conflating conservatism with practicality.
No, I'm not conflating it at all. What I'm saying is that culturally, I probably am more conservative because I follow more of a Christian lean onto the things that I do, which
I appreciate that.
But politically, I would say I'm more practical. What makes the most sense to help all the folks who live within the community move forward?
Okay, I respect that. Everybody.
Yeah. But a lot of people, they don't even think that far. They're just like, I'm voting based on identity. I'm voting based on who makes me feel good. And I think that that's a bad strategy and can hurt a lot of people.
I agree. And I think that's part of why Trump was elected, was emotions and feelings and this belief that he actually cared, because the Democrats failed to inspire and failed to have any leadership over and over again. And that's what we're seeing happen. And so people think, this is who's representing me right now? Well, then what's my other option? 40% of almost half of Americans didn't even vote at all because of how they feel about both these candidates.
Exactly. And that goes to my point. And I think that's why you've seen such an uptick in black men voting for Trump, is like they finally felt connected to something, because a lot of men, period, do not feel connected to the Democratic Party, especially a lot of men of color. But due to racial idolatry, we've been told that Republicans are racist, and we have some history behind it as well. But for the most part, a lot of black men aren't even looking towards that, or looking for people who may speak the language or speak to them in that space, because their whole lives they've been told that those folks hate you. And that's a bad strategy at the end of the day. And I think that we can do a lot better if we invested in our local politics and then national politics. Because guess what? And you know this, I think you know this as well as I do. A lot of the folks who have been political in the last 30 days, they ain't gonna be political in 2 years when it's time for us to start changing stuff locally. You know, because the numbers support it. So we just get onto this emotional train and we stay on it all the time.
I agree with that. I would agree with that. It's pretty frustrating, as both of us have been in advocacy spaces, and we're having these conversations year round about how policies impact our communities or our clients, and about whether those policies are coming from a municipal level, at the city, at the county, at the state, whether it's the courts, the Supreme Court. And so I don't have the luxury of having these conversations every 4 years, and it's much bigger than Trump versus than Harris to me.
Right. So. And my hope is that this experience launches an opportunity for us to talk and to get to a space of better organizing. And honestly, I wouldn't mind if people were apolitical, just so we can have some clarity on where we're going with things. Like I think about it. I live in the suburbs, and there's a reason behind that. I grew up in the hood my whole life. I've lived in the hood longer than I've lived in the suburbs. There's a stark difference between how politics is done where I live versus how politics are done in North Minneapolis. Very different approach. But I think that, and you as an organizer, you probably know this better than me, I think that those folks who live in a North Minneapolis or South Minneapolis or Frogtown or on Selby side, their voice is so much more important to be politically active, to make the impact, because a lot of things don't happen with it they should. And the fact that those folks do not necessarily organize politically and stand up, like more people, I should say. I know that there are folks doing it, but more people. Those are things I'm like, man, how do we shift that? How do we change that? Because those people, we have their ears right now. They're having conversations. They're talking right now. But, in February, it's going to be gone. Once Trump is inaugurated and we get past Martin Luther King Day, people are going to go right back to sleep. So my hope is that we take this little window of opportunity to start educating and encouraging people to get more politically active, especially men. But that's me being male and being biased.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's definitely should be a priority for us to do. I think what's frustrating is that we can't seem to get to a place where we can agree on what the problem is. And I would say that the enemy that I've been fighting since the beginning of my organizing days over a decade ago until now, and the enemy that I'll be fighting forever, is white Christian nationalism. And that's what the campaign that the Trump administration ran on. And so he's just a face, he's just a placeholder there at the moment. But if we can't notice that the rhetoric that he's using is the same fascist rhetoric that like Bolsonaro's using in Brazil and Netanyahu's using in Israel and the Nazi Party was using in World War II in Germany. The way that he talks about different racialized groups and LGBTQ people or homeless people, or the way he talks about borders, then we can't really start to have an honest conversation about why all of these issues are compounding and who our actual enemy is as a people.
Got it. Do you have an example of how he's been fascist? Like just one topic or issue that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he, for example, let's say like reproductive rights, right? That's been a big issue that I think has been dividing men and women when we talk about this election, maybe that you've seen as well. Access to abortion care. And that's a campaign that the white nationalists developed not long ago in the 20th century in order to coalesce the rights. There was a time when they had to kind of construct that campaign against reproductive health care. And it's lost a lot of effectiveness, just like marriage equality has lost a lot of effectiveness, because at this point, most Americans support those issues. Most Americans support access to reproductive health care. But when we see that the Trump administration and like-minded folks try to weaken those protections and do things like put conservative Supreme Court justices in office and overturn Roe versus Wade, what we start to see is a decline in public health. We have very clear data that now in Georgia and Texas and other states where we've repealed abortion protections, more women are dying, period, point blank. We have the data. It's very clear where you have more abortion and reproductive health protections, we have higher public health outcomes and less unnecessary deaths from things like miscarriages, right, where people need abortion health care. And so when you are supporting policies like that, that negatively impact specific demographics of people disproportionately, so that negatively impacts poor Black women more than anyone else, right? More than it does wealthy white women who will always have access to abortions, right? And I think that's why we see Black women more than any other demographic supported Harris for a reason, because she's not great and people can criticize her, but people will feel the material impact of this presidency immediately. And who's going to feel it first? The people who are most marginalized are going to feel it first. Houseless people are going to feel it first. Disabled people are going to feel it first.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. I'm not gonna come back on that right now. I'm gonna wait a second. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to pull up this graphic, but I'll wait. For the folks who are in the chat that said, can we ask questions? Absolutely, you can ask questions. Just put your question in the chat. It should pop up on our end and we can ask it. If you have a question for both of us, just state for both. If you have a question for Jay, put question for Jay. If you have a question for me, just put question for Brandon or Universal or however you want to term me. Just FYI, Jay, I'm known as Universal Jones online. So
okay.
You see that here. Then
what my alter ego needs to be.
Yeah. Jazzy J, that's what I'm gonna call.
Right, I like that. Okay.
All right. Do I want to bite the abortion bait or do I want to leave it? I don't know.
Talk about any issue. What do you want to talk about?
I don't know if I want to go down
examples.
Oh shit. All right, we got somebody who pulled up. Now this is a person from Facebook that they asked that they wanted to come up. Are you okay with people joining us?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Let's see what they have to say.
All right. So we'll wait for some questions to come on in. All right, Keith, we're gonna bring you up. Feel free to, you can be cammed up or you can choose not to. It's up to you. How are you doing?
Good. Do you remember me?
I don't. Refresh my memory. Where do we know each other from?
Yeah, many years ago when I was doing my MSW internship at 180.
At 180 degrees, yes. How are you?
Yes, that's where we met. Yep, I'm great.
Great.
I was watching you guys live and I realized I asked you if I could join earlier. So,
yeah, I remember.
Is it okay if I ask a couple of questions? Sorry, what's your name? Jay. Is it?
Yeah, this is
yeah.
Jay's joining us.
Okay. So thanks for doing this because I really appreciate, because I feel people don't have conversations. You see what I mean? Like we siloed. I live in the countryside on a farm. I'm the only Black person miles and miles. My kids are biracial. Yeah. You remember now?
You're in like Farmington? Where were you at again?
Lindstrom area by Taylor's Falls.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're way out there. That's right. I remember. Yeah.
Sorry, I was doing chores. That's why I look like, crazy person.
Friday. You're beautiful.
You're good.
No, I was with my cows actually running around.
Sounds peaceful.
So thank you both for having the courage and actually saying, let's have a conversation. First of all, I really appreciate that. Second of all, I will say that I appreciate both of you, the points you make, especially I'm hearing a lot of people saying the Black man, the Latino man have done this. This is horrible. Some people are like, I cannot and will not function because he gets reelected, right? I am a social worker, but also I'm a farmer and I help other farmers navigate. I'm Arab and African immigrant. So my dad was originally from his family from Syria. I'm from Somalia, grew up in the West. A lot of times what I encounter when I'm working with people, both in rural and in the cities, is the challenge I have faced and I often struggle to articulate is white, liberal, not necessarily progressive, but liberal females feel that they have to speak for people of color. And not only do they have to speak for people of color, but when we make point, particularly some of us who are outspoken, we get shut out. We're called the names. I've been called self-hating Black woman. I've been called all kind of things. And I run into that with my own in-laws. And I often have to remind people, being a Democrat does not make you progressive, nor
liberal.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Liberal.
What's that?
Liberal.
Yeah, not necessarily liberal and progressive, a little different, but like understanding of other people's experience. So I can't assume all white people have same experience. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times people don't take into consideration class, culture, language differentiation, all kind of stuff, right? I'm half Jewish. My mother was born and came from a Jewish family. And what's happening in Gaza, I will call it genocide. But also, like, same people who will lecture me about who I voted for or who I stand for will at the same time say we stand with Israel. Well, that's fine, but do you ever lived in Israel? I have. Have you seen what happens to, what's that? You have to? Yeah. So it's like, what happens to Black Jews and Arab Jews and Palestinians, literally,
Horrible.
and so on. So yeah, it's very convoluted, but also I agree with you said, Brandon, when it comes to Black men, like my brother, he's Republican from get-go. I was very, very much angry with him because I'm a feminist. I have my own, roots and issues that are important to me. But I did not respect that in exchange for him. Did that make sense? It was almost like, how dare you?
It makes sense.
And literally came to what?
I said it makes sense to me why you expected maybe some sort of like loyalty.
Yeah. So for me, go ahead.
You got it. You're good.
It's getting out.
Yeah, I think you might be on a little bit
Say
of a
that
lag.
again. Sorry, you froze.
Yeah, I think you might be on a lag, but just keep talking. We can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm saying, like, I would love feedback from both of your experience in navigating in those. In American culture, what I see often is the wholesale. Is also not caring what's going on in foreign policy, and it's always about us. Not only about us, but is often, I feel, about white people who middle upper class white people who do not want to admit that their way of life may be come about the cost of others.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I
It's too-
feel like, yeah. So could you guys? I mean, I can't speak Black American or a Black man in general, like my brother said,
Sure.
of their experience, right? I'm an educated middle upper class woman, not upper class, middle class woman, and the police are not gonna look me at the same way they're gonna look at my brother.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
The places he navigates, I don't navigate, and so yeah, I would love to hear your take. And I don't think Trump is going to be the worst thing that happened. I mean, what did what did the last administration has done? Not necessarily just for people of color, but in globally. Like we watching a total genocide in Gaza, and both the vice president and the president said, "Yeah, we send in weapon. Yes, we send in." There's a whole Marine sitting there right now,
Mm-hmm.
pointing weapons to Iran.
Yeah, I mean, the current
What?
administration failed so horribly that how can anyone defend them? And then people feel like Trump is their alternative, regardless of the fact that he doesn't have plans for his policies. He'll make promises that get people emotional. We're going to deport everybody. We're going to make the economy better. People like to hear that. Harris wasn't saying that. Does he have a plan to make that happen? No. Do people pay attention to the intricacies of his plans and how he wants to get rid of the Department of Education and how he's, getting these very conservative Supreme Court justices stuck in there for the rest of their lives? Not really. People are paying attention to, I'm going to relieve you of your suffering and your pain. I'm going to change things. I'm going to make things tangibly different for you. He's saying what people want to hear. So I definitely understand why people are going for that. And I'm not mad at it. I think as a country, we have failed our populace. Public education, we have failed. We're one of the most inequitable developed countries in the world. We have horrible health outcomes, one of the highest infant mortality rates. We perform worse in math and reading and writing. We have more homeless folks. We spend more money on healthcare per capita than any developed country and have more health issues than any developed country per capita. So I think we need to be honest about the legacy of our country, what it was founded in, why we're still here, why we have these racial disparities that exist, and I can't speak to what it's like to experience white liberal people in spaces trying to lecture you because I think that's not okay. And so I think that, both lived experience and values should be important. Like Brandon was saying earlier, like he doesn't think we should only identify with people based on one part of their identity, like our race, our gender, or something to support them. It also has to be what we're saying.
Absolutely.
And I believe in a liberation politics. So regardless of what your race or your gender is, if you're about the liberation of people, cool. If you're about more equality, cool, between races, between genders, for LGBTQ people, for disabled people, for everybody. So that's my politic.
Gotcha.
I agree with everything you say, but I have also seen an experience where people actually shame people and say if you don't agree with us, then there's a lot of name calling. Whether it's like I worked in a county where they call people rednecks. These are within white people, right? And they naming and shaming poor white people, right? Rural. And frankly, I have lived in Minneapolis and I have seen similar poverty and struggles in rural white people that people of color in the cities have. Interestingly, more in common than people in middle class or of either color, whatever color,
Right. They don't want you to say that though. But exactly.
Right. I agree. So Brandon, what will you say to that?
To your original two questions that you posed?
Yeah.
So the first question you posed was around foreign policy and why a lot of Americans don't focus enough on foreign policy. And I think I would just talk about Americans. I think one thing is we focus on what's happening right in front of us more than what happens outside of our country, which I don't think is a bad thing. But if we're going to focus on it, how do we actually deal with the issues? As Jay was saying earlier, homelessness has exploded. Yeah, we're in all different types of housing issues, food insecurities, all these things that are going on. Why aren't these things being worked on to a way that we're either eliminating or reducing it significantly, and why are they increasing? So to me, I rather focus on those things personally than focus on foreign policy. Now, I do realize that a lot of things that happen in other countries does impact the United States, but my initial gut reaction is taking care of home first, and that's personal life and
Yeah.
on the local level. I don't see nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying we disregard what's taking place on a national level, but I do think that you need to take care of your home base first before you start interfering with other people's affairs, which we have not done over the last few years. We've sent a ton of money to Ukraine, and a lot of that money could have stayed right here to fix a lot of the core issues we have within our own country. So that's
Okay.
my question. Yeah, you can respond.
Okay. Can I ask? Okay, so that is exactly where I have quite a struggle with American-born, American-educated people.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to reduce homelessness, healthcare, inequities of all kinds, sorry, somebody's calling me. Hey girls, can you tell Abby I'm on the phone, please? I'm in a meeting. Sorry, it's my husband. He's doing hay outside, and he's like, "Come help me." Whether it's Ukraine, sorry, I'm like juggling. Whether it's Ukraine, one bomb, okay, one bomb costs over $11 million. That's getting dropped off in Gaza. Cluster bombs that we can't use anywhere else in the world was sent by Biden administration and sent to Ukraine to use it. Okay, it's illegal. It's outlawed for evident reasons. So the money never goes out of the country. That's what people don't understand. It goes to multinational weapon makers from the United States and Europe. What goes to overseas is the result of that weapons and wars and the misery. People are dying in the Mediterranean Sea, drowning, running away from their own homes because foreign policy U.S. administers is what's ruining their home countries. For example, do you think people will run away from their homes if there was not a bombing? For example, I will tell you about Somalia. Okay, nobody ever hears about what's happening in Somalia, and the United States is using drones to bomb people.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because the Red Sea, because of Indian Ocean. They talk about pirates. You said you want the money to stay here. The money will not stay here, but it doesn't live here because it goes to the 1% or more of 1% of 1%, because of when Americans hear foreign aid, they really don't know how it works. We're not just taking cash and just giving to people. When it comes to food, we give food you and I will not eat that we can't sell anywhere from our farmers, monocropping like corn, soy, and we dump multi-year. We have like storages, and we send food that's like expired 10 years ago, and then we pay our farmers that way. So our money does not ever go outside of the US except the multinational pharmaceutical weapon makers and food industries. Not only, for example, look, take another country. Clinton administration destroy Haiti. They dumped rice from California that our farmers couldn't sell into a self-sufficient food because of NAFTA. They totally dumped it, and over basically for pennies on the dollar, where the Haitian farmers went broke and couldn't grow anymore. Another case, for example, is what we did in the 70s in Honduras and Guatemala. They still digging people the CIA killed. Look what we did in Chile in the 70s. For example, Obama and Clinton administration, what did they did? They killed the president of Libya and destroy a whole country that, you know, very much existed in and sustained its own people, because they said we're going to drop the dollar and he advocated African Union money, and literally the French government lobbied and begged the US to take care of this president. And we sent it our own military to kill him.
Yep.
So the money, if we want to turn things, we have to think globally. It's no longer isolationism. Otherwise, everything that Trump said, I know he thinks he means it, but no offense, he's dumb as can be. He's not understanding foreign policy. He may understand business. I like some of his ideas, but he has no clue when it comes to how foreign policy works.
So let me
I
ask
remember first time he found out we buy. So hold on one second. Remember first time he found out we buy planes from Boeing for exorbitant amount of money, and he said, "What the heck is it made of? Gold?" I agree with him, and I hope that he can have people who can help him cut the shit. But I hate to say it, the same people are the ones who profit this. Go ahead, Brendan, you had a question.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question. It might not even matter because the results are already in, but do you think that Kamala understood foreign policy better than Trump was? How so?
Oh my God. No, she did not. And she does not care. And frankly,
probably like most Americans.
I hate to say it.
No, they don't care.
She has done more damage in criminal justice.
She doesn't care about, Harris doesn't care about what?
Jay, can you say that again?
Oh, I was just saying, I think it cut out right when you said.
Harris.
She's on the
Harris does not care anything but what she thinks. Well, is for example, Hillary Clinton, incredibly smart, right? She had her 1% people she cared about and worked for it. Mm-hmm. Harris, not very clever, not smart, not intelligent in the way somebody who we want a president, who let alone understanding foreign policy. No, zero. She has no clue. And also, interestingly, if you study when she worked as a DA in California, she has done more damage to men of African heritage than any other DA in the history of California. She literally extended their time to use their labor for free, which is another form of slavery. The two-party system in this country is horrific.
Yeah, I
got it.
Say that again.
Jay's gonna respond, and then we're gonna pause because we're gonna.
What did you say, Jay?
1 second. Jay's gonna respond, and then we're gonna pause because we're getting into neopolitics, and we wanted to have a conversation about women crashing.
Okay.
So we're gonna go ahead, Jay.
Oh, I just appreciate you. I appreciate your insights. And I agree with you on. I share a lot of your sentiments, and I'm really frustrated at the lack of options that we have in this country, because everything you said is true regarding the fact that she was a former prosecutor, and we have to be honest about what that means. That being said, I unequivocally believe that there's a material difference that people feel. Oh, she's gone. Okay. Do you see this? Do you see this Facebook comment about this country was built on the backs of Black women? And
I see it by Jessica. You want to respond to that?
What?
You want to respond to it? It's from Jessica. Yeah.
Okay, I can't see the person's name who posted it, but I was just curious what your thoughts were, because it's like a gendered comment, and that's what you wanted to kind of frame this.
Yeah. So again, I think that comment, it's one of those trap comments for myself, because it negates that black men did anything and black women were just out here not working in tandem. I do realize and recognize the efforts that black women have put in to make this country what it is, and we should, from Shirley Chisholm to Fannie Lou Hamer. If people want to bring up Harriet Tubman, I don't bring up Harriet Tubman. I think we have evidence, but it's a whole nother story. But the folks that we do have documents on, and we know for sure have done a lot of work, I think that's important, but we can't negate the men as well. And I think, again, when we make comments like that, we continue to divide black men and black women amongst each other. And it's just another slap in the face of black men. And when you have comments like that, yeah, you are empowering women, but you're also slapping black men in the face. And that's why you will have a ton of black men who will start to reconsider politically aligning with folks, because you keep crapping on us all the time. And that's the thing. I'm not saying that what was stated isn't true, but why does it have to be so gender based? Why can't you just say black people have put in, which we used to say, but over the last 10 years or so, there's been a much heavier gendered basis around the black women's efforts and versus the black men, and we're being minimized. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, like I told you at the beginning of this conversation, because there's probably some new folks in here. I publicly am not. I stay in my lane and I don't weigh in on conversations that are specific to like intra-racial topics, like the divide between black men and black women, for example. I'll stay in my lane on that. But as far as this person's comment, I don't see any attacks at all on black men in this, and I wonder if maybe, you know, at times being critiqued when you are oppressed can feel like an attack, or at times, you know, like the conversation looking different or being framed different can feel like an attack to people, even when it's not. Perhaps people are projecting their interpersonal dating lives or relationships or other things on some of these conversations.
Yeah, and I don't expect you to see it because, as you said, you're a white woman and you probably wouldn't see it. But so as a black man,
that comment, that comment that I'm referencing, you think there was an attack against black men on there?
I think it adds to this continued divide that we have. I think the fact that it's the claim, and if you look at the whole comment, she mentions black women like several times. It's the defining factor that black women have done all these things there's a hint of black men ain't doing it. So we have to step up and do it. We've been the ones who've carried the community. We've been the backbone. We continue to hear these narratives. And what I'm saying is those narratives don't feed a collective unison between black men and black women.
I hear that. What do you think about black women who say that they feel like they're being failed by white women on the gender front, and or on the race front, and they feel like they're being failed by black men on the gender front, and they feel like really alone in this like isolated experience where they're experiencing both racism and misogyny, and they want just like more support from white women and black men in navigating those landscapes?
Yep, I feel like they should define what does support look like, because it's hard to do something that you don't know. And also, if you don't define how you feel misogyny is attacking you and racism is attacking you, then how are you ever going to change anything?
It seems like they very clearly defined it to me, but I like to study and listen to like black feminist literature, like Toni Morrison, Audre Lorde, all the greats, Angela Davis. And so I feel like they have really clearly defined the ways that they feel like men as a whole have failed them and white women have failed them, and really laid out the ways that black feminism and their intersectionality gives them a unique vantage point in understanding the ways that oppression disproportionately affects different groups. Their positionality allows them to see things in a unique way that should be respected and uplifted.
Sure. And I believe that duality shows its parts in all parts. And I think that with a lot of the literature, I've read it too. I used to consider myself to be a black male feminist.
Not anymore. Damn. Okay.
Absolutely not. No, I would never claim that. No.
Okay.
No, not at all. But I do respect the fact that women are empowered and are in positions of leadership. I mean, even in my own organization, my whole board is all women. They help make decisions. Most of my colleagues are women. I work in the mental health field. I've been around women pretty much my whole life, professionally and personally. So I understand that. Yeah. But my issue and concern is when you start to minimize the role of black men and there's no solution on how to collectively move forward, then you will get black men who just stay away. And then we get judged for every little thing we do. Even if black
women, and we both agree with that Facebook comment that someone just left too, that this is about the failure of the Democratic Party.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can't get mad if more people start to vote for a non-democratic candidate if we're not going to be honest about the role that everybody plays, including Black women, and how we got here. Yes, you've done a lot of things, but there's also some things that you need to fix on your end. Now, me saying as a Black man, I'm going to catch heat. I know. But it's the truth. We all have some accountability in this situation. And anytime you try to hold Black women accountable, or you ask them to hold themselves accountable, now we're trading and now we're, misogynist. And this all we're trying to say is, well, how do we collectively solve the problem? Let's get it. Let's put it all on the table and figure it out. Now, there isn't a Black woman up here to, combat that. So I know you're not going to respond. But I have another show with another woman at some point because they're going to see this and they're going to be ready to be talk about this. And it's important. How do women hold themselves? I'm going to ask you just as a woman. How do women hold themselves accountable when it comes to politics? If you feel like misogyny is coming in and it's causing a problem, what is your strategy to get to some solution that works for women and men at the same time, if there is one?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't view it in that binary of a lens. I'm actually professionally, I'm gender fluid. I use they, them pronouns. I use all pronouns. I don't see gender in this very men think this way and women think this way. And how do we bridge that gap at all? I think there's a huge range of diversity between race and gender and layered identities. And so I'll start there, that I can't answer the question of how women can be accountable, because me as a queer person, I think much differently than a lot of women that I encounter when it comes to the ways that I engage with men and the ways that I engage with dating and society and things like that. So that's a hard question for me to even begin to answer, but for that reason.
I'm sorry that I did not ask you your pronouns. I've been calling you.
Well, I use all pronouns. It's all good. But I'm just giving that context that gender is a social construct, and some people buy into it and operate and perform gender more than others. And so they'll think of this way of how can we hold women accountable? And it's well, which women are we talking about? As we just saw from the results of the election, 50% of Black women or 50% of white women are thinking this way. 90% of Black women are thinking this way. So I don't think we can group all women together when it comes to the way people are operating and thinking.
But if it's a majority, can't you make a generalization?
A majority of Black women voted for a different candidate than the majority of white women.
Hold on. Is that true?
I believe so. I think it was 53, 54% of white women supported Trump.
Hold on. I got the numbers.
It's quite a shame. And not that I'm supporting Harris at all, but wow, white women.
But even that statement just goes back to comparative. It just goes back to why are Black men catching so much flack? Because again, if that statement you just made is more white women voted for Trump and then more Black men voted for Kamala, and there's no wow. It's you all are still traitors and it's your fault. That's my whole point of the conversation. But I see what you're saying. Okay, interesting. All right. I don't know how much time you have. We're about to hit the hour mark. Do you have more time? Where are you at with your schedule?
Yeah, a little bit more time if there's a couple other points that you want to touch on. I haven't really got to look at the comments to see if anyone's really saying anything.
There's no questions. There's people just engaging. There's another Facebook comment. I have to hit another tab to figure out who it is. Says Black women face the double jeopardy that Black men don't have. Say more. I'm not trying to crap on Black men. I don't disagree. Black bodies, period, built this country. But Black feminist perspective has to say Black women birthed the Black man, and Black women who shed their blood to build what we have today. No one's negating that. I don't think anyone's saying that that's not true. And then there's another comment on YouTube. I think it was horrible for the mainstream media to push the misogyny agenda. True. In the whole election, the bottom line is Democratic Party has been failing Black people forever. It was a setup. That was another comment. So, and again, this stuff was, the mainstream media was pushing this narrative. We were being attacked before the results even came up. And it's interesting that this is what's happened. But anyway, let me pause. I don't know how much time you have. I do want to get your perspective on women crashing out and what your thoughts are on the emotional responses that we've seen. And you say you've seen some men too. We talked about the men, but what specifically about the female counterparts? What have you seen? What are your thoughts on some of the crashing out?
I think I know what you're going, what you're getting at here. Whether or not I can agree on the consensus that women are crashing out, but I think that because women face more gendered violence than men, that they are having some reactions, human emotional responses to what feels like perhaps fear or grief or anger at a more authoritarian candidate being elected. Authoritarian candidates, right-wing candidates, tend to limit bodily autonomy and self-determination. And people who experience gendered discrimination will be more likely to feel the impacts of that. We talked earlier about abortion care, but not just abortion care. Black women have the highest birth mortality rate up with Indigenous women of any demographic, and it's like 5 times that of white women in this country. So just the fact that there will be impacts on public health and healthcare and these issues, and if you're privy to those issues, which you have to be, if you're a Black woman educated in healthcare, then of course you're going to be upset and scared. And so that's why this whole conversation started, is because I saw you share like a joke about women crashing out. And, I did see you make a couple of jokes directly after the election. And I personally, I was not out here campaigning for Harris. And I've kind of been like a spectator and thinking about how to organize in the long run. But I have been just curious about, it seems like you have a pretty lighthearted approach, and you've been like, why are women crashing out? And to me, it's like, of course I understand why certain groups, of course I understand why undocumented people are crashing out or scared, because they're going to be mass deported. Of course, I understand why a lot of women or poor women or Black women are scared, because their reproductive health care is going to be disproportionately impacted. So then obviously it feels like a lack of compassion, or people might be upset or hurt if they see it framed in kind of like a lighthearted or even like a pointed attack way, right?
Yes, I would agree with that. Okay. So the main two things are gender-based violence and the public health concerns that can come from it. That's
one example. Yeah, that's an example we can work off of.
And I'm not asking for you to be the spokesperson for all women. I'm truly trying to figure it out, and I'm going to talk to more than just yourself. And I'm going to keep a list of what women are sharing, because I want to know, how did we get to this point, given the experiences we've already had? Yes, there's some rhetoric out there, but does the evidence actually lead to the responses that we're seeing? And then if it is true, what do we collectively do to move forward? That's where I'm trying to get at. Yeah, there's a method to my madness on Facebook. If you notice, I don't post a lot. I don't get too political, but I will ask questions and see how people respond, because I'm always just testing the temperature of what's happening out there. So, and you'll see in some of my comments, you'll get responses from people from all different sides. And I think one of the way we have these dialogues, you can see even in the Facebook chat, a lot of people are appreciating this conversation, because me and you are coming from two different spaces for the most part. We ain't yelling and cussing each other out. And also you've been very upfront about who you are, right? You're like, look, I'm a queer white woman. Like, this is my perspective. Like, this is how I feel about it. It is what it is. And I think if we're able to have those types of conversations, we can actually move things forward. So
I agree with that. And if we're gonna focus on any group, I really do think we should focus on white men. If you look at like 90+% of like mass shootings or violence that's committed, is it ever women? Is it ever girls shooting up schools? Is it ever Black people?
Yeah, we've actually had a couple recently. We had a couple recently.
Okay, so pull up the numbers for me and see what percentage of school shooters are girls or Black people, because I guarantee you it's less than 1%. And that's for a reason. Identity matters. Identity informs the way we show up in the world.
Well, I will invite you back to have that conversation. Right. The numbers can surprise you. I want you to do me a favor, and we can talk about this, me and you, later if you want. Check out gunmemorial.org. Just write that down. Go to gunmemorial.org, and then we'll have the conversation about school shooters and shootings that happen at schools and on school campuses and all that. I think you're going to be a little surprised by some of the actual numbers. But
yeah, I love to talk about the way that identity informs that process.
Yeah, and especially because me and you, we've worked at a very similar high school, and we know that gun violence has impacted that school several times in the last.
Gun violence as a whole disproportionately impacts Black communities, but who's holding the gun in school, in indiscriminate shootings in grocery stores and movie theaters, 99% of the time is a white male, for a reason.
All right, we're gonna cover it. I'm just gonna say we're gonna cover it.
All right.
I hear you, and I've heard that argument and I've looked at some
And one
information.
thing for you, Portia, in the comments, don't give up on changing policy around the Supreme Court. You said that once you're in there, you're in there for life. That's just the way it is. That's not the way it has to be. We can organize. We've changed things. There's a movement to abolish the Supreme Court. I recommend you look into it.
Do you want to talk to Portia? She might come up and ask a question. So you don't have to. It's up to you. She can ask some questions if she wants. Portia's my homie.
Yeah, if she wants to, I'm open to that. But she
Portia, do you have any?
Insinuate that I don't understand the way the Supreme Court works earlier. And I'm like, that's not the issue, but I definitely think we could break out of that framework.
All right, Portia, do you want to come up and ask a question? Put it in the chat. You don't have to, but if you want to, put it in the chat. I'll send you the link.
I can't see people's names on here, but I think someone missed the way I was trying to connect dots of multiple conversations and how we ended up on violence and how that's a recurring theme throughout our conversation. So
yeah, you want to connect the dot for them, or you don't have to, but if you want to,
it's okay.
I'm trying to get Jay out of here. All right. So, but no, I appreciate this conversation. And for folks who are making connections and stuff, this is my first time actually verbally talking to Jay. We've been Facebook friends for probably a couple years now.
Some years, yeah.
Yeah. So we've been digitally connected. But no, I do appreciate the conversation. Yep. All right. So she ain't coming up. All right, Jay. So
Brian made a good point real quick though before I hop off. White women voted with their men to protect their privilege. Definitely agree with that. I think that's why 50% of white women supported for Trump.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't read the second part of that comment.
This is why the gender divide in the Black community is weird. I mean, again, that's
I know you can't speak on it, but what he's talking about is true. That's the whole point of this conversation. But I'm probably gonna have this conversation a few more times. I'm gonna have it with some Black women from both sides, and to really get down to the bottom of it. And I encourage you to come back and to chime in as much as you like. And if you ever want to talk about anything, always reach out. We can do it online, we do it offline. It's up to you. But no, you're pretty cool. I like talking to you.
I appreciate it. I'm down to talk to anyone always. I think that's how we get things done. So
absolutely.
Thanks for having me, take care of yourself. Don't let this shit stress you out.
Yeah, please don't. Jesus. Any final thoughts or questions or anything you have for me?
Nah, I had a good time. I like chatting with you. Let's do it again.
Cool. All right, Jay. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Yeah, peace. All right, folks, that's the conversation. I wanted to do more listening and talking. I'm not here to debate. I'm just trying to get some perspective out there. There's a lot happening, man. I don't even know where to start. Now, my online life and my real life are blending all together. Who knows where this thing's gonna go? But yeah, we're here. I'm back online. I'm back making content. I'll have more stuff as we go. Portia's crazy. I love Portia. Portia is like my little sister. My digital sister girl. More to come, folks. For the folks who are over at the Urban Landlord, thank y'all for coming on by and seeing what I got going on over here. Please sure to subscribe. For the folks on Facebook who are wondering what the hell is going on, just stay tuned. You guys can come subscribe to the YouTube channel, but there'll be more happening here. We're just having dialogue, trying to figure out this mess that we're in. And Trump is the president, folks. Trump is the president, whether you like it or not. So the best thing you can do is either get politically, geared up, and do things on a local level, because that's what's going to have the most impact in your life, and figure out how you're going to make the most of these next 4 years, because things are not about to change. So we're here now, and no matter how you feel about it, this is what it is. So take care of yourselves, be safe, be constructive, be well. This is Brandon Jones, aka Universal Jones, and I'm out. Talk to you all later. Peace.